Hello and happy Monday, April 15th. It is spring break here in Western Massachusetts, which means my kiddos are home, which means there's going to be noise in the background and there's nothing I can do about it. Let's read the health and science news while I drink my second cup of coffee. So this first article comes to us from Reuters. The title is Pfizer RSV shot meets goals in trial of high-risk adults under the age of 60. So a reminder that there are a couple of new preventatives out there for RSV. One is Pfizer's Abrezvo, I mispronounce everything, and it was approved for use for adults over the age of 60. There's also another vaccine that was approved called Arexvy that was put out by GSK. So just a reminder, RSV poses the highest risk for very young children and for the elderly. And so these preventatives have been approved for, there's approval for pregnant women to provide protection for infants just, when they're born, for very young children and for the elderly. But this article is talking about a trial that expanded the population and was looking at adults between the ages of 18 to 59. Specifically those who are high risk. And it sounds like the results were promising. So it's likely that Pfizer is going to submit for approval for expanded coverage from the FDA. And I would imagine GSK is going to do the same for their vaccine as well. So results were promising. The company said that those with a higher risk profile represent about 10% of adults 18 to 49 years of age, and nearly a quarter of those between the ages of 50 and 64. So when we're talking about high risk adults who would likely benefit from this, we're talking about those who've had organ transplants, those undergoing chemotherapy, or survivors of congenital disease. It's unclear whether there'll be clinical benefit for adults under the age of 60 who do not fall into any of those categories. All right, this next article comes from NPR. The title is An Artificial Womb Could Build a Bridge to Health for Premature Babies. This is one that caught my eye because both of my kids were born early. My daughter actually just met the criteria for premature. She was born at 36 weeks, but of course, some babies are born even earlier than that, and of course, that comes with major risks. So right now, they're testing out something, Riggins, that they're calling a bio bag that basically becomes the new womb and replicates the physiology of a uterus. And they're doing these tests right now with pigs. So the article says, if very premature babies can be safely sustained on a device like this for just 2 or 3 weeks, it could make all the difference between life and death, or a life with severe disabilities and health problems or not. So in initial studies, it looks like they have seen some blood clots and heart problems. So they're definitely still working through the technology. But the article does say that researchers at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, CHOP, have safely sustained fetal sheep on a similar device for 4 weeks. In this particular experiment being summarized in this article, it looks like they've only been able to sustain a pig fetus for about a week. So still working at the kinks, but just some incredible technology being explored, although there are some ethical considerations that have to be discussed as well. And then the question is, are people going to, how are they going to feel about having their fetuses taken out of their bodies and put into an artificial womb? So anyway, lots to unpack here. All right, this next article comes from AP News. No link between Ozempic, Wegovy, and suicide, EU drug regulators say. So you have undoubtedly seen these drugs in the news. They are GLP-1 receptor agonists that people are taking for diabetes as well as weight loss. There's lots of controversy surrounding them, but one of the things that people have said, there's been some anecdotal evidence that it's increasing or increasing the risk of suicidal thoughts for some people. And so Europe, drug regulators in Europe have been looking into this. So has the US FDA. Preliminary reviews are showing that there is no causative link that's been established, but it's certainly something that continues to be monitored. So the FDA has said it could not rule out that a small risk may exist and that they continue to study the issue. So long story short, if you are someone who is at high risk for mental health issues, depression, suicidal ideation, this is certainly a conversation, a consideration to be had with your healthcare provider, but research is ongoing to see if there is a causative link. This next article comes from The Hill. Nearly 1/4 of adults booted from Medicaid are still uninsured, survey finds. So as a reminder, Medicaid is a federal program. Eligibility is determined based on your income as a percentage of the federal poverty level. Although it's a federal it's a federal program, states actually can set eligibility criteria, so it's done on a state-by-state basis. And so this recent survey that was conducted by KFF, they found that nearly 1/4 of adults who said they were disenrolled from Medicaid coverage in the past year, since states started resuming eligibility checks, remain uninsured. So this is the first survey to look at health coverage among adults who had Medicaid coverage in early 2023, just before states resumed eligibility checks and disenrollments after pandemic era protections ended. So in the pandemic, everything kind of changed and eligibility criteria were loosened because we needed people to have healthcare coverage during a global pandemic. But then things started to change in 2023, and this recent study shows this is a major problem. And basically, there are a lot of people who are without coverage right now. Among those who are disenrolled, 28% found other forms of coverage, including 16% on employer-sponsored insurance, 9% on Medicare, and 8% who purchased their own insurance through the ACA marketplace. But yeah, even going without healthcare for short periods of time, disruptions in coverage can be really problematic. So again, the survey interviewed a little more than 1,200 adults and found that about 1 in 5 said they'd been disenrolled from Medicaid at some point in 2023. This is a big problem. All right, this last article comes from AP News. It's the first drug shown to slow Alzheimer's. Why is it off to a slow start? So the article is talking about the first drug that has been shown to slow Alzheimer's disease. It hit the market in America just over a year ago. The drug is called Leqembi. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But doctors expect that some patients will hesitate to take it because while it is shown to have an impact, it's a limited impact and there are potential side effects. This is, the hospitals are trying to figure out exactly how to implement this. It's deployed via IV infusion, which poses some logistical challenges. More than 6 million Americans and millions more worldwide, of course, have Alzheimer's. So this is something that a lot of people have been waiting for. But again, the rollout has been slower than expected. The FDA gave Leqembi full approval last summer for patients with early stages of the disease. Medicare does cover the cost of Leqembi and the cost of scans that are needed to diagnose patients. However, hospitals and healthcare systems have needed more time than expected to set up their systems for delivering Leqembi. So the rollout has been a lot slower than expected. The drug itself costs more than $26,000 a year. Health systems are still trying to understand how coverage for its drug and its infusions and the needed scans will work so that patients don't get stuck with bills. So long story short, some promise for this drug, but we're still working out kinks of studying it and deploying it. But fingers crossed, because this would really improve the quality and quantity of lives for so many. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed reading the news with me today. Hope you have a great week.